You're listening to the Veterans Heritage Hour on the Vets on Media Network.
Good morning, Arizona, and welcome to our listeners from around the globe. My name is Joe Brett.
And I'm David Lucier.
And you're listening to the Veterans Heritage Hour. And we are today in such a wonderful location with great guests, Ashley Durham and Alec Griffith. And we'll get to them in a minute, but we're in a great location today. David, can you let us know, let the listeners know where
we're sitting in a beautiful, beautiful facility called the East Valley Veterans Education Center, and it's sponsored by the Maricopa County Community College District, one of the largest community college districts in the country. This is a facility operated by the Rio. One of the components of that district is the Rio Salado College, and we're sitting here with the good folks at the East Valley Veterans Education Center, and we're just thrilled to be here and thank them profusely for allowing us the access to this facility.
I think this facility, obviously by the name, was supposed to, it started off helping veterans from all the community colleges or all the veterans, and helping them to weave their way through each college, I guess, and provide services to them or to connect them to the services that are available to them.
And it's grown substantially.
And now it's not just for veteran students, it's for veterans who are coming in from World War II and other wars, looking for connections to services on a variety of matters, not necessarily educational matters. So it's serving a bigger population, making more connections, and we're very happy for them. And reaching out. They're not just exclusively serving student veterans, but anyway, they're out reaching into the community and being of service.
And just a quick shout out. I mean, none of this would have been possible without funding through Congressman Harry Mitchell when he was in the U.S. Congress, and brought a substantial amount of funding to this facility to get it kicked off and get started. And it's just blossomed.
Well, great. This is a wonderful spot, and we're happy being here, and we're happy with our guests today. David and I are on the board of directors of an organization called the Veterans Heritage Project, and we're on the board because of students like the ones we have with us today, Ashley and Alec. We couldn't have been, David and I were both interviewed by students and by Barbara Hatch, the founder, and our stories are in books 6 and 10 respectively. This year, the Veterans Heritage Project just celebrated its 11th book. It's 1,000th veteran, and I think 900 students have been through the program in over 23 high schools here in Arizona.
In fact, we, according to Bob Patrick, who's the director of the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress, has indicated that VHP, our organization, is the single largest contributor of veterans oral histories to the Library of Congress, which is a wonderful, wonderful attribution and quite a goal.
And so without further ado, I want to introduce Ashley Durham, who interviewed 11 veterans during her 4-year stint at Cactus Shadows High School, and Alec Griffith, who interviewed 4 or 5? 5, but then he offered one up for the team, and he took over a lot of the administration and technical duties of the club, a volunteer club at Cactus Shadows. So welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here. Ashley, you were the president.
Yeah, my senior year.
Your senior year. And so how did you guys meet? Where did you meet? You both were in 8th grade, and you both knew each other before Veterans Heritage.
Yeah, I moved in the middle of 8th grade, and Alec was kind enough to befriend me.
You moved here?
Yeah.
You moved to Cactus Shadows?
To our middle school, Desert Arroyo, and then we both went to high school together. So we were already friends, but then we both decided to join VHP a little bit in. So.
What prompted you, Alec, to join VHP?
Actually, for me, it was kind of an interesting story. I was in Miss Hatch's world history class.
Miss Hatch is the founder. She was a Peace Corps volunteer.
Yes, and she gave me an extra credit assignment to listen to an interview that the VHP had performed and actually transcribe it, to type out everything that was said in the interview. And that was sort of an extra credit assignment for the class. And by the time I was halfway through this listening to this interview, I knew I wanted to join this club. I was so enthralled by this story and so amazed by what the club was doing.
Do you remember the story or who it was?
I do not remember the name, but he was a pilot of a bomber during World War II.
Uh-huh.
And just hearing his stories, not even in the air, but on the ground, they were all so interesting. And I had friends in the club, and I knew what.
Fly boys, they get all. I mean,
They should.
get all the glamour.
They should.
I knew what the club was about, and that sort of solidified it for me that I wanted to join the club.
Just to hear more stories, or you were captivated by
Yeah.
it?
Oh, to hear more stories and to get involved with what they were doing.
Oh, great. And Ashley, what was your moment that why did you join VHP?
Well, I had Mrs. Hatch as a teacher for world history, and she started talking about the club, and she said, "Hey, if you're interested, why don't you come in and take a look at our club?" And I was thinking, you know, our high school, Cactus Shadows, had a lot of different opportunities for clubs, and I was thinking, you know, I want to do something productive and meaningful with my high school career. So all it took was the first meeting to decide, you know, this is something meaningful. And I thought about my grandfather, who I was able to record a story with my mom. My mom was very diligent recording all the stories.
This
he
was your
told.
mom's dad.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. My grandfather on my mom's side, and she was diligent recording all his stories. So we got that published, and that was part of my motivation.
How did you got it published?
with the Veterans Heritage
Okay,
Project.
okay.
Yeah, as an essay. I believe in the 10th book.
Okay.
And which
David's
grandfather's name?
David was in.
Frederick King was how it
Okay.
appeared. So
I'll look it
yeah.
up. If he's in book 10, so am I.
Yeah.
So
Look him up.
Barbara Hatch had this program where she was connecting students with veterans to help teach her world history program.
Mhm.
And by the time you guys were there, maybe it had already become a nonprofit.
Yes, it had. I believe our sophomore year it became a 501c3.
And so it started off because Barbara, other students before you got involved. I think it was Laura Byers' son was involved,
Mhm.
and Donna's son was involved.
I believe they graduated the year before us,
And-
but they're a
and-
legend.
But those three people,
They're legend.
Yeah.
they were legend, right? And so those three women formed, along with Brittany Henritzi. She was in the first class, but those four women actually started the Veterans Heritage Project and made it a 501c3.
Mhm.
And all because the parents saw what it was doing for their children and said, wow, this is transformational for them. We ought to get involved and support it. And that's kind of how it got off the ground.
Yeah.
And Alex's dad, Harry, was our treasurer. He's a CPA, and he volunteered his time and really has been wonderful for us because he got us professional CPA and accounting practices. And now when we're applying for grants, et cetera, around the state, we have a great set of books, and we have a wonderful treasurer who put us in a good stead. So your dad has been terrific for us.
Yeah, it was. I was kind of sad to hear that he wouldn't be coming back next year, but things are kind of picking up where he works.
Yes,
that was,
and so that's been good. But he's left us in good hands, and he's always available. And
He did a great job of bringing us up to speed.
and he got a standing O at the board meeting when
yeah,
he got it when
yeah.
he offered his resignation.
That's a legacy project that he did, and it'll last and keep us in good stead for quite a while.
So, Ashley, what was the story? How did you what was the thing that hooked you on VHP?
It was really the opportunity to become engaged in something meaningful and something that I saw had a lot of purpose behind it. During high school, I know during the 4 years, there was one moment where a veteran came in, and it was a week or so after our reception. And I believe it was my first year in VHP. And the veteran, he said, you know, I've had this jacket in my safe for about 30 years. I haven't put it on because I've never felt a reason to. But after seeing the way you kids put together that reception last year or last week, I've never been more proud of my service. And so he had his jacket on with all the medals, and it was really somber, but at the same time, very. It was just an incredibly meaningful moment because it felt like we were doing something purposeful.
And impactful. I mean, you
Exactly.
remembered this. I mean, this through the years.
Yeah.
So the reception that Ashley's talking about, the process is in the first part of the year, students are interviewing veterans, and then along in December or so, the interviews stop, and then they have to copy edit the stories.
Mhm.
And then the stories are are put in proper editing format, so they then can be put into books,
Mhm.
and the books are then bound, and they're great pieces of work, and the books go to the Library of Congress and to the veteran. And often the veteran, it's the first time he or she has ever told their story all in one sitting, right?
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
you experienced that, a veteran who'd never told a story before?
Yeah, a lot of times actually. Like you
Great.
said, most of the time the veteran has told the story in pieces to certain people, like
Mhm.
family members or friends, but they don't really get the whole thing out and their whole deployment from beginning to end
Sure.
until we come and interview them. And that was one of the things that I loved about the project was the therapeutic aspect to it.
Hmm.
A lot of veterans, because they had never told their story, never really had the therapy that goes with, getting that off your chest,
Mhm.
sharing it with the world. And that was an aspect of the program that I really did enjoy.
Well, there's a bond there. I mean, if someone is telling you, the thing that's palpable for me is when you see the veteran and the student together. I mean, that is priceless.
And we see that annually at these book signing events. After the book's put together, then the students, the veterans, and their families come together in one setting, and we have a little ceremony, an event, and then those veterans who are in the book that year are available to autograph the books for everybody who wants to buy one or is given one.
Yeah.
And, it's a great.
And the little event, I mean, Cactus Shadow and the schools that contribute books to it, I mean, they have it at the Arizona West campus in a big room, and there's close to 1,000 people there. Veterans and students and families, etc.
Arizona State University West Campus.
Yes, exactly. And Michael Crow spoke
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Was
Mhm.
that was yours?
Our junior year.
Your
I
junior
believe.
years, but
Or possibly senior.
he said that there was no history better. He called you all young scholars. And so David and I call you young scholars. And Michael Crow is a significant person in Arizona and probably in the educational system in the United
Yeah,
States. Right?
the president of Arizona State University, again, one of the largest public universities in the country, and arguably the most veteran supportive university in the nation. And with the model he adapted, and now we're seeing a beautiful transition and progression of VHP high school students. Ashley, yourself, you're attending Arizona State University
Yes,
Tempe
I am.
campus at the Barrett Honors College,
Mhm.
and glad to have you over there.
Well, it's been a great experience as far as the plethora of internships available and just the people that you're able to engage with. There's really a diverse number of students that just their skills are unmatchable, and they're engaging them within the community and innovating in ways that are really inspiring, actually. So.
And Alec, you're going to that little school over on the West Coast there. What do they call it? UCLA?
Yeah, that's
Is
what
the
we
one?
call it.
Yeah, something like that. And how's your experience there with your educational experience?
I love it. I'm learning a lot. It's a little bit, I mean, obviously it's a little bit different than high school, but I guess a little bit different than what I expected college to be. It's very challenging, which I love. And
What are you studying?
I'm studying microbiology.
Oh,
So
And they have a great program there, I'm sure, at UCLA.
yeah, it's a very intensive program, but you learn a lot, which I enjoy.
So what skill sets did VHP help you with and prepared you for the rigors of UCLA?
I mean, a huge one is time management.
Wow.
Because with all of the things we have to do through VHP, through the interview, writing our essay, editing the essay, on top of any clerical things we're doing to help the club improve. Time management is a skill you learn by necessity. If you didn't have it going into the club, you learn it very quickly because you need to. You learn it because you have so many things going on. And if you don't manage your time, you're not going to finish all the things. And Ms. Hatch is very good about teaching students that the time management they need. When she gives us deadlines, she makes sure that she's there to help us reach our deadlines.
And is she with a whip, or is it
with a whip?
with an encouraging word, or both? Or
Both, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of the whip.
Encouraging is a very versatile term, but but
the beatings will continue until
yeah.
the
But she-
attitudes improve.
Exactly.
But she definitely created like a feeling of accountability between all the students, because if one of our friends like had an essay due 2 weeks ago and it wasn't done, then we would say, somebody's going to get on you and it's not going to be pretty. So you might as well just get it done. And that's what we did.
There's a lot of, I heard that that's one of the things that I hear repeatedly through the conversations is the students not getting their essays in on time. And that seems to be the big concern when we meet at board meetings. We're trying to think our way through and how do we manage that? How do we make it easier for students or to get it in on time? Because that really slows down the book production,
Yeah. Well,
which has to happen on a date certain.
yeah. And theoretically, we're supposed to stop our essay production and essay or interviews in December.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes we do interviews in January. We've done interviews in February, which also slows down and challenges the production because formatting a book that's going to be 300 plus pages is incredibly challenging because you shift one page and all the other pages have to shift.
Sure.
So it's a very challenging.
So do you have conversations with your team? Come on, if you slow down, you're letting the team down. Is it that kind of a conversation within your group?
Yeah, and we've learned to be diplomatic about it, like which
So
is another
diplomacy
skill.
is a skill that
Yeah.
you picked
Oh,
up
yeah.
It is
along the
another
way.
skill. Yeah.
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 So, but then you have to learn write edit, copy edit. Your English and your grammar and all those things have to be meticulous, do they
Mhm.
not? I mean,
And combine those with the technological skills of
Yeah.
book publishing.
so this is a heck of a rigorous program. I mean, this is not an easy club to join.
Yeah.
And so when Barbara uses the term educational enrichment, I mean, they're talking about education on steroids.
Yeah. You're taking another class and you're taking almost a vocational class where you're learning skills that you can apply to future careers.
And that's helped you because didn't you get a job as a New York Times stringer?
Oh yeah, I was marketing the mobile app for the New York Times and as an internship my first semester, and then I was also a reporter for the state press throughout the school year. So
But did your credential as a VHP graduate help you with those jobs or
Absolutely.
those internships? That was what got you those internships.
yeah, absolutely. I was able to say, I know how to stand up in front of a group full of scary looking people and then
Like
tell
David
them,
and me.
oh yeah, you guys are vicious. Yeah,
And
and-
David-
They made us put our seatbelts on.
Yeah,
we're,
David wears a
we've been
scary.
restrained
He
here
wears a
for-
scary hat, man, in his special forces stuff. When he starts saying it tastes like chicken, it's pretty scary. Well, that's terrific. And so, in addition to learning all the I guess the emotional or the historical, etc. I mean, talking to a veteran, listening to his or her story for the first time, and seeing them getting emotional about it, that's got to have an impact on you. It's more than just a story. There's some gravitas in that story, right? There's some stuff going on there.
Yeah. And it's a very different side of history because in high school, you pick up a history textbook that gives you overarching numbers. You're told, there were this many wounded in this war, this many dead in this war. But until you hear the story of a single one, it doesn't really hit you.
Yeah.
Because then it's no longer a statistic that you have to reproduce for a test. It becomes personal.
Okay.
And you're looking at this and you say, well, yeah, there were, say, 20,000, but I know one.
Yeah.
And
It changes, doesn't it?
It does.
And that one becomes all of them. And if you
Mhm.
think that way about one, you say, oh my gosh, I mean, 1 million people like that died with 1 million sets of parents and 1 million relatives. And I mean, you can feel the
It
pain.
just grows
Yeah.
exponentially.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So you're learning a little bit about civic engagement and all the technical skills. And that seems to be a buzzword right about now in the state anyway, right?
Mhm.
Those types of issues.
Yeah, I think that the more people can contribute to that, I mean, the better off we are, and the whole idea of civic engagement, dialogue, connection is hugely important in today's world of specialization and placing ourselves in niche where we get a little bit broader perspective, not only of the veterans and non-veterans community, but connect to the humanities and all the skill sets that entails. So we'll continue the conversation here shortly.
Yeah,
I
we're going to
believe.
come back. We're at the East Valley Veterans Education Center at Rio Salado. We'll be back in about 2 seconds.
Everyone's going to need an attorney at some point in their life. I'm no different. Hey, everyone, it's James from Vets On. Whether it was my last will and testament before deployment or my ongoing custody battle for my children during my divorce. I needed help, so I lawyered up. If you need help, I urge you to contact Capstrom Law Firm. Capstrom Law Firm in Springfield, Missouri services clients throughout the state in criminal law, personal injury, and family law. With over 13 years practicing law, Tom Capstrom understands both law and court procedures and how stressful they can be. Let Tom Capstrom Law Firm and his dedicated staff take the stress and worry out of a difficult situation by calling him today. We feel so strong about the work that Tom and his staff are doing that he'll be a monthly guest on the show. Tom is a veteran and a listener, for God's sake, so you know the guy is solid and will fight for you. Give Tom a call today by calling 417-864-0552 or email Tom at capstromlaw.com. And don't forget to tell him that Vets On sent you.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertising.
If you or someone you know is looking for a new job or career, you need to visit the pros. National Career Fairs at ncfairs.com. National Career Fairs hosts over 300 career fairs a year nationwide. The events are free and give you the perfect chance to meet some of the top employers in your area face-to-face. To find the nearest career fair to you, visit ncfairs.com. Again, that's ncfairs.com. What are you waiting for?
Veterans served us, now it's time we serve them. As a veteran of Afghanistan and Iraq, as well as a current military member deployed abroad, I would like to take a minute of your time to tell you about Patriot Hills of New York. Patriot Hills of New York is a nonprofit organization providing support to veterans and their families. They partner veterans in need with over 65 health and wellness organizations, community groups, as well as philanthropic foundations providing no or low-cost services. They've helped over 400 veterans through confidential referral services, assistance with veterans issues, employment placement, as well as educational opportunities. If you need assistance or just want to help veterans by donating your time or services, contact them at info@patriothills.org. Again, that's info@patriothills.org. Visit patriothillsofnewyork.com for more information about their services or how you can donate. Our veterans deserve no less. We can give it to them, and you can help.
You're listening to the Veterans Heritage Hour on the Vets On Media Network.
Hey, we're back. This is the Veterans Heritage Hour. We're at Rio Salado, the Veterans Educational Center, and we're with Ashley Durham and Alec Griffith, both VHP students and both now completing their freshman years at their respective universities.
Arizona State University
Hoorah.
and UCLA.
UCLA, those Bruins. Welcome back, you guys, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
In all your travels now, you guys started interviewing veterans, say, in 9th grade. And I remember being with Ashley and Sophia. We went down to the Cronkite School of Journalism.
Mm-hmm.
That was a special day because you and Sophia talked to Dean Callahan, the dean of the Cronkite School, another center of excellence for ASU. And Chris Callahan is a great guy. And there you were showing them, yeah, this is our stories from freshman year, and this is what we wrote our senior years. And you were having, and you met Tim McGuire,
Yeah.
Professor McGuire, and you guys were talking about your articles with professional journalists. That was pretty heartwarming to me to see that you guys had confidence in your writing enough to show and compare and have a conversation with professional journalists. So that was a nice day for me.
Yeah.
And seeing you and Sophia in action. And you actually interviewed a veteran when we were there as well.
Yeah, well, it was great to talk to Tim McGuire too, because at that point I was considering journalism, and I got to ask him, okay, what is your definition of journalism? Like, what do I think I'm getting into here? And he gave me a very interesting perspective where a lot of people say, like, oh, journalists just report whatever they want to, whatever their agenda is. But he said, no, a true journalist reports the truth, but sometimes it just takes a while to uncover that truth. So that gave me an interesting perspective.
Yeah, and he enjoyed your writing, and he had a nice conversation with Sophia regarding the Pope. That was an interesting deal. Yeah. Sophia is one of our students from Argentina who grasped this program and found her American citizenship through this program and interviewing veterans. What did you feel about your writing? Did your writing improve, Alec, when you were, was that one of the noticeable things?
Yeah, most definitely. I was never a very strong writer, and it was a process through VHP to kind of get me there. But I remember probably around my junior year, whoever was responsible for writing the book held up a an essay, and I was across the room. I couldn't see the details on the essay. And the person writing the book said, "Who wrote this? Who wrote this essay?" And I come closer and I realize that it's an essay I wrote, an introduction to one of our sections that I wrote. And going through my mind is, oh goodness, I'm in trouble. I've messed up an essay big time. And the guy writing the book says, "Thank you. This was very well written. I had a pleasure reading this." And I was kind of taken aback. I'd never gotten that sort of feedback on an essay. And it felt really good to know that this program had helped me.
How does it feel when you see your story in print for the first time in a book?
That's almost an indescribable feeling. I feel really proud. They're like my children. I have all of my books.
You're a freshman in college, for God's sake.
He's got 4 kids already.
And I've got all the essays. I know exactly where they are. I can open to the page and show them to all my family and friends. Show off my essays.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
And the veterans, I mean, do you still email or conversation?
I keep in touch with all of the veterans I interview.
Because this relationship doesn't end when the book, I mean, that's the relationship forms then and doesn't end then. I mean, you have the veteran has a vested interest in you, your success, and you have an admiration for the veteran. It's a precious relationship.
It is, and it's a unique one as well.
Yeah.
In the hour or two it takes to finish this interview, you form this unbreakable bond with this veteran that they may show up to your graduation, they go to your family events.
Yeah.
It's a very unique relationship.
Yeah, and that's what captivated us, is that spirit of connectivity that starts then but doesn't end then. And tell us about Doc. Man, you have pictures with the Doc everywhere.
Yeah. Well, he likes pictures, that's for sure.
Oh,
But
tell us about Doc and how you met him and his story.
So I interviewed him sophomore year, and he was one of those that I needed to go back and see, just because, first of all, I had to go through the essay and make sure everything was good with him and it was how he wanted. But he kind of he was one of the most welcoming individuals that I've ever met. And now it's gotten to the point where he still calls me every night to say goodnight. He emails me good nights just to say, "Hey, I hope you're having a wonderful day." And it's just an incredible example of the result of a cathartic relationship that's created after an interview. And he came to my graduation, and
we have pictures of him on Facebook. So tell us his story. He was at Iwo Jima, Doc?
He was, Guadalcanal.
Walter Davidson, Doc Davidson?
Walter Doc Davidson, yeah. He was at Peleliu, Guadalcanal, and the Admiral Islands. So he was definitely in the line of fire. And today, sometimes I'll look through his fridge and Walt, you really need to get rid of this. This is kind of gross. And he's like, I saw the river full of blood, and I was drinking from that river, so I think I can stand it. And I'm like, okay, Walt, well, you're home now. So
that
gives you perspective. He definitely
was he a medic? He must have been a Marine Corps medic.
Yeah.
Wow. So. And those guys are, I mean, their heroism is legendary. And we always think of, when you see a medic, you hug them. And
as they say, they begin to call for their God, they call for their mother, but before that, they call for Doc.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
and you were a doc too, weren't you?
I had a medical training background and did some of that stuff as a special forces medic, but the preponderance of my duties were to command an airborne infantry company.
Yeah, he didn't have any medical training as far as I was aware of. But yeah, his position was versatile based on whatever was demanded of him at the moment. So yeah,
which is usually the case in combat situations. You have to adapt and overcome.
Sure.
Do what you need to do to get the job done.
So you guys, freshman year, you're new to the Veterans Heritage Project, and you get this great trip.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that go to, Alec? How was that trip created?
Well, every year they decide on a trip that they want to take.
Barbara Hatch decides.
Barbara Hatch and the club sort of vote on a trip.
Sure.
And that year we decided to go to Amsterdam, Luxembourg, and Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a very interesting trip. I'd never been out of the country. It was
Sure.
my freshman year. And I decided I was going to sign up for this trip and see how international travel was.
And Ashley, you were on that trip as well?
Yes, yeah.
Were you part of the vote, or were you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, first of all, traveling abroad, I was like, count me in. Of course, expenses play a part. Where I was like, okay, how can I afford this? But the trip was wonderful, and it was we were able to afford it through other means. But we spent most of the time in Amsterdam and just seeing a culture that's very different from our own. I mean, you can always find things to relate to. And that was one of the best learning experiences was, even though, I mean, these people have clogs, they have tulips everywhere, and they have these awesome windmills, and we don't have that where we live in Cave Creek.
Yeah.
I mean, we can relate to them on so many different things,
Sure.
just human things.
Yeah.
So
you find shared humanity is what travel's all about. that
exactly.
People are not different. They're really the same. It's
Yeah.
just-
Tell us about the trip a little bit here.
Okay. So like she said, we spent most of our time in Amsterdam, and then we spent a little bit of time in Luxembourg, and I think Belgium was just like a layover. At a train
Yeah, it
station.
was like a couple hours when we were
Yeah.
at a train station.
but you were there to see the
Yeah, it
to
was
study the war.
It was a historical trip, and it was very interesting because it didn't feel like a historical trip. It didn't feel like one of those school field trips where you have a worksheet to fill out
Sure.
and you are aware that you're learning. It was just one of those things. You left and you realize, wow, now I have all this information in my head. Like, where did it come from? And so Ashley mentioned the windmills. When we went to go visit the windmills, it just seemed like we're visiting another part of Holland. But we actually learned how during World War II, when the German tanks were rolling through, they were just blowing up whatever they could, destroying all the windmills they saw. And the Germans quickly learned that the windmills held back the water. And quickly, all those tanks were suddenly sinking to the bottom of this new lake.
Isn't
they had
that
formed.
something?
Yeah. And it's just the fun little history things you learn.
Yeah, I
And-
wouldn't have known that. That's a nice.
Yeah,
piece of history.
it's almost like an interview. You learn the primary sources of these historical facts.
Sure.
And it's just
And there was
another way.
and there was a cemetery there too.
Yeah, in Luxembourg, we saw the American Memorial Cemetery for the Battle of the Bulge, and they had it on the site of the Battle of the Bulge, and that was a moving
An
experience.
American cemetery.
Yes, an American cemetery.
And so
What-
describe. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, what'd you feel when you saw this thing?
Well, from the outside, you couldn't really see much of it, but once we got inside, it was a sort of an awakening moment. It made the history real in a sense. You're looking out and you see all of these tombstones. They were either in the shape of a cross or a Star of David, and you're looking out and you see all of them, and it becomes real. You say each one of these has a person beneath it. Each one of these represents a person, and like we talked about earlier, like that one person that you now can relate it to is each one of these is that one
Sure.
person.
with a set of parents and a
Yeah.
set of love people who mourn the loss of that one person. Multiply that by millions of times.
Exactly.
You've got the horror of it all, on both sides. And then you wonder, why do we do this? I mean, this seems like an awful price to pay for whatever grievance we may have had. It doesn't seem worthy. This seems like a bit excessive to
Right.
to come to any conclusions over some differences here. It's something. Were you on that? You were that trip as well.
Yeah. And I mean, this was a great experience after going through the interview process. After we interviewed veterans, we went and saw this memorial, and we're like, these are the people that didn't live to tell us the story. And so it was very humbling in that way. And we would see at certain grave sites, there would be stones at some of the headstones, just little like soft pebble like stones, and it would be from people who had prayed there and left it. And just seeing that it's like someone cared enough to think about this person and to pray for them. Maybe it was a family member, maybe it wasn't, but it was cool to see that engagement and just that understanding across so many different cultures that visit that memorial.
Were the cemeteries were in Luxembourg?
Yes.
So were the local people, did they come and there must be a lot of respect for that gravesite from the locals who were liberated by these
Mhm.
Americans and British and Canadians.
Yeah. do you remember seeing anyone specifically that you
Well,
could tell?
when we went to the cemetery, it was actually closed for visiting, but Miss Hatch in all her glory got us in by donating a book to the cemetery. And so she came with book in hand and handed it to the owner or the person in charge
Uh-huh.
at the time. And the person gave us a tour of the cemetery. So it wasn't visiting hours.
Sure.
We didn't see anyone there.
So you got a personal tour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, it was
That's
great.
amazing.
But we didn't. But we could see in the city the respect that people had for the United States and their actions during World War II
Mhm.
through the memorials they had, and just even how friendly they were. Oh, you're American. Oh, thank you. You know,
Really?
and it was pretty amazing.
So they're thanking you for the work that
yeah,
your our heritage.
Yeah.
They're thanking you, the children of the democracy that sent our grandfathers to liberate them.
Yeah.
Isn't that special? Really? It's a nice feeling in the world to be liked, you know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not-
Sometimes it's even nice just to see them grateful that we care, because sometimes that's all people want to know is that you care. And by being there and by engaging with the people, that's sometimes the most exciting thing for both of you in that circumstance. So
Did you go to any other places? I know. Did you go to another place? Was that the only trip that you had taken?
My junior year, I went with Miss Hatch to South Korea to see war sites there. It was a similar trip. We visited memorial cemeteries,
Sure.
but on that trip, we also got to visit the demilitarized zone between
yeah.
North and South Korea.
That's pretty gnarly now, still, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that was a tense moment.
Really, for you?
Even yeah, really for me. We had a military escort at all times, and we went on a bus from place to place. And when you got off the bus, you had to move quickly from the bus to whichever building it was you were going into.
All bunkers, right?
Yeah, it was.
And our troops, it used to be our 2nd Division, was there. Was that?
There are still American troops there, and it was definitely tense. A lot of shouting, you know, move, and
Really?
such.
To move quicker
Yeah.
and to not be a target, evidently.
Mhm. In the
Was there
event
respect there from the Koreans about the Americans?
there was immense respect. Although we noticed a difference between the older generation and the younger generation. The older generation, we think what it was is the older generation remembered the war.
Well, they experienced it.
Yeah, and they were very grateful. You know, the same thing with thank you very much. They were very friendly towards Americans. The younger generation, they weren't unfriendly, but they didn't have the experience that the older generation had, and so they weren't unfriendly. It was just a different.
Maybe
So-
it's time we sign them up for VHP.
There we go.
So in our second show, we had Susan Key on with us. Susan Key, you know, Susan.
yeah.
She's South Korean. They moved here. She emigrated here, and she's writing a book about the American soldiers who liberated her country and gave her the freedoms that she took for granted growing up. She kind of forgot, really, until she got over here. My gosh, had it not been for the Americans, you know, we would have been part of North Korea. I mean, that's a pretty daunting thought. So she's going out of her way to thank veterans and to write about them. And so you saw firsthand the generations don't really know or have a different outlook on the war based upon their closeness to it, maybe in age.
Right. Yeah.
Were you on that trip, Ashley?
I was not. No.
Did you go to another trip, or was that the only one that you went to?
That was the only one besides our Greece trip senior year. So that was separate. That was separate from VHB.
That was okay. You guys
Mhm.
just did it. That was a jaunt.
Yeah.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
One of the classes went to Barbara Hedge took a group to Normandy,
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
and one of the students had interviewed this paratrooper.
hmm
And when they landed, the village was there. The people at near Normandy, near the beach, were ready for this. Every year these groups go back, and the villagers are there to see the same veterans who they've known since the battle.
Yeah.
And so someone was there asking this veteran about, tell us what the day was like. And he says, I don't have to. I have my VHP student here.
Mhm.
She will tell you. And then she spoke up. Yes, this fellow who she was with landed here. There was another guy who was hung up on the roof, and she set the scene because she had written his story. And I think it came off pretty well.
Yeah.
She also went to Vietnam with a group of students.
We didn't go on that trip. That was a very last minute trip. I think
Yeah.
only 2 students went on that
Yeah.
one.
Was that I think our junior year, but
So we want to get into, you have now interviewed veterans. You're of a generation that seems to be, what did you say, David, of going to war without end? Or we're in a situation now in our country that seems to be, well, we've been at war for the last 13 years anyway, in Afghanistan, in Iraq. Before that, we were like in a 10-year war in Vietnam. And I mean, we seem to be in perpetual war. So what are your feelings about that, if you can dwell on it a little bit? We'd like to learn more about what your generation is thinking about the current situation in the United States.
Well,
You're
Tough one?
That's a tough question, but I mean, like you mentioned, when you see the impact that all of these wars have,
Uh-huh.
it does raise the question: is it worth it? Like,
Uh-huh.
what could possibly warrant all this death and destruction?
Uh-huh.
And it is we are at war a lot, and I think that's not an opinion of the generation at this point. I think it's almost a fact of this generation
Yeah.
that we're at war a lot. And but at the same time, since the conception of the United States, when haven't we been at war a lot? So it's almost like we could give peace a chance if we could find it.
Yeah.
And the part that we have to question is, what is the motivation behind war? Are we looking to change a country? And is that even a realistic option for us? One thing that I believe Ms. Hatch, I talked to her a lot about political issues, and she said that she would be all for pulling out the troops immediately if it weren't for the women in the Middle East, because right now it may be the armed forces presence that is preventing the women from just going back to having to wear a veil and not having any rights whatsoever. While that's still an issue, would it be a greater issue if we weren't there? And while I understand that, I also think that part of what the United States needs to focus on more is what our issues are domestically, because it's a well-known fact that we're having a lot of economic issues domestically. And the question is, when we're focusing all our efforts abroad, how much can we focus on improving ourselves here? And then if we improve ourselves here, maybe we can do a better job and make more of an impact abroad.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a general opinion. It's not.
Well, that's a
necessarily
good
fact.
opinion. I mean, you've certainly have a right to it. You've written and you've interviewed and you've traveled the world to have an opinion, and it's valued. And now you're certainly registered to vote, and you have a responsibility. So and you're taking this responsibility, I should say, not lightly. I mean, you're really engaged in it.
Well, that's an interesting point you just brought up, and it set me to thinking a few weeks ago. How do people thank a veteran? How do say kids like yourselves, with your background, your education, how do you continue to thank a veteran? Because that's a theme.
Mm-hmm.
And my answer came back to vote intelligently, and vote with every election. That's the way you thank a guy like me and a guy like Joe and a guy like who you interviewed in World War II or Korea, Vietnam, and today's young veterans. That's the way you thank a veteran on a continual basis. Is you vote intelligently. So that's a good point.
No,
Well,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that Alec and I think we learned from that, because we do hear a lot of political perspectives all across the board from veterans. But one thing that we did just in the statewide election about a year ago, we sat down and we said, you know what, we need to figure out who we're voting for. And we're in the same district, so we might as well talk about it. So we sat down, we looked at all the candidates, their voting records and everything online, and everything that we had access to. And we said, this person looks like a good guy. This guy looks like he's going to be doing what they say they're going to do. This lady looks like she knows what she's talking about. Okay, so this is who we're going to vote for. And we didn't always agree, but at least we made ourselves educated on the topic. So
Well, that's pretty neat. And that's all we can ask for, because it looks like we're going to be, some of your classmates have opted to go in the military as a result of VHP. But you opted, obviously, the military is not going to be, you're not going to be in the military. And that's a conscious choice as well. Do you have an appreciation for the military that you wouldn't have had without VHP, do you feel now?
I feel like I have more of an appreciation for the military. I've always appreciated the sacrifices made by veterans and everyone in the armed forces, but VHP really humanized it for me. I now am able to appreciate specific stories of specific people and apply those to other people I meet who served.
Ashley, your thoughts on current and our engagement in these wars? Is that it seems like people are just getting up and going there. Yeah, I'm going to join the military tomorrow, and there's no awareness maybe that we're winning or not winning or what they just are joining.
Yeah, well, I think it's very noble for people who they say, I want to support my country and this is how I'm going to do it. But I also think there's several options for how you can do that. You can be a politician, you can be any form of public service individual, you can be a nurse and you're serving your country.
Sure.
So in that way, while there is incredible gratitude for the people that give their lives, I mean, you can't give anything more than that.
Sure.
I think it's also important just to think about all the different ways that you can serve your country. And that's one of the ways that we even look at VHP is like there's parents like Alex's dad who have these accounting skills, and he's giving them to the club to further its efforts. And
Sure.
just like that, we can serve our country in many ways.
Yeah, defining, service is a broad spectrum subject, and there are several different ways to. I mean, when I go in the classroom and talk about service, and the military isn't for everyone. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody has that skill set or the capacity to obtain it. So when we talk about service to community, I start out at the lowest level and ask everybody, who has to take out the garbage? Well, that's a service to that community. And what happens if that service isn't performed?
Mhm.
Well, there are fairly dire consequences. And so there's more than one way to serve and service your community, your nation, or the globe.
Yeah.
Do you guys TV and who informs you of what's going on? How do you keep track of what's going on, and are the politicians doing the right thing with our foreign policy, or how do you keep yourselves informed? Ashley, what keeps you interested?
Well, and sometimes on the radio, I listen to NPR. My friends make fun of me. They call me like a 60-year-old, but I
Or
also
70-year-old.
Yeah.
Amen.
Goodness.
Yeah, I know.
NPR is it.
Yeah,
Not
But-
a day over 60.
yeah. But I also go when I'm at the gym. I flip through all the channels. I'll listen to CNN, Fox, whatever I happen to be feeling at the moment. Just because I think it's important not to listen to just one station or watch one show. Just because you need a variety of opinions. And while they might be extreme all across the board, at least you can mix them all and say, okay, where's the truth in all of this? And
Is there any one person or some thinkers that you read or pay particular attention to? Have you gotten into that? Somebody a guru that you kind of listen to and kind of.
I mean, I enjoyed the Daily Show for the humor.
Yes.
But as far as in the news, I try and just focus on remaining diverse. I mean, I read the New York Times, read the Wall Street Journal, but I try and remain open to everything so that I can have a diverse opinion.
So you have an informed opinion.
That's a nice way to put it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're informing yourself. Alec,
Yeah.
how about you?
I do the same thing. I get most of my news online. I started that this year when I went away to college because I didn't have a TV. I
Sure.
couldn't watch the nightly news.
Uh-huh.
So I started to compile all these resources online, the Los Angeles Times, New York Times, wherever I could get news, and then I would do the research. If I read an article and it mentioned something that I didn't understand or I wanted to know more about, I would go do the research. And I would do this on a daily basis. It was sort of my way to procrastinate doing homework. And
Not a bad way.
and so I would become informed on these things and form my own opinions on them based off what I read and what I researched.
So you guys are in an IB program.
Mhm.
Can you talk about that?
Well, we graduated. It was 2 years of our senior and junior year. So it's like there's
What is it called? IB is called
International Baccalaureate.
the International Baccalaureate.
Yeah, and
Okay.
so there's AP classes, which is advanced placement, which is like college classes, and there's IB where all of your classes are advanced, and then you may take some AP classes as well. And there's some contention between AP and IB, but we definitely felt like we worked pretty hard.
So an International Baccalaureate, you have to be accepted into that program. Your
Yes.
grades and your marks and GPA, I guess,
Yeah.
has to qualify you for admission.
Yes. It's you apply for it your sophomore year,
Yeah.
and then if you're accepted, it's your junior and senior years that you're in IB. And it's a holistic thing. It's not just classes you take. It's also you're required to do certain service things, and it sort of takes over your life, but
Sure.
it's worth it. And
So
it's
you're
a very-
leading a life. If you're an IB, you're leading a life of constantly being informed, questioning and researching and
It's it does. It forces you to get out there because it's an international program.
Sure.
So it's not an American perspective on history. It's a history from, an international perspective. And then you're forced to stay up to date on things. Like in biology, if you're not up
bring
to
it
date,
back to the germs and bacteria.
if you're not up to date on the current research,
Sure.
you're falling behind.
Uh-huh.
And so the program it forces you into this staying informed and keeping an open perspective.
Great. So now you're out of Cave Creek, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's a little town north of Phoenix and Scottsdale. It's a great little western town. We just got 5 minutes left, but we got time for this. And so you've traveled the world now. I mean, so how do you, and you're now meeting international students in college. How do you relate to your international classmates?
Well, like I said, IB forces you to have this international perspective.
Sure.
And it's since you're not learning the American way of everything, you can relate that way. You say, I see where you're coming from because I've studied that as well. And traveling the world is great. It's great when I meet someone who is from a place that I've been to. It's, oh, I've been there. And you can talk about their hometown, which is something that they didn't expect anyone in this new country to be able to do.
Do you, Ashley, do you share the same outlook on life? Is there a shared humanity with them as it is with you? Or is it, it's not a provincial outlook on life, I don't think.
No, absolutely. If there's anything that IB and VHP has taught us, it's that, everyone has an opinion, which I mean is obvious, and everyone's entitled to that opinion, and it doesn't have to be your opinion. But it's important to recognize that the opinion is valid, and maybe use it to form your own or further solidify your own. Because you might say, you know what, I don't agree with this person's argument at all, or with how this person lives their life at all, but I understand that's how they live their life, and they're still alive, so it's good.
Sure.
And traveling abroad, you learn to relate with different people because you see this is how they live, and they live happy, successful lives. So good for them. And you just learn to understand others through that way.
Well, I've been involved with Sister Cities since I got engaged with it to work in the former Soviet Union back in 1992. And that has been the most rewarding experience because I meet these wonderful students from all over the world. And looking at the Facebook page here and who's been listening, we have a sister city, Marrakesh, Morocco, and there's listeners there. There's one student, Donia, who's in Turkey, so I've noticed that she's picked up the show. And I've always dreamed that we would get VHP students and sister city students, particularly from the Islamic parts of the world and maybe even Central Eastern Europe, but we'd get our students together, Vietnamese students and American students, and have this conversation of how they see the world, because the future is yours. And are you guys going to be able to overcome the glitches and the hangups and the misreadings and the mistakes that we have made, which has caused all this friction, and now these horribly bloody wars. I mean, it's pretty disgusting when you think about what Muslims are doing to each other in the same religion. It's pretty fratricidal almost. It's pretty daunting. So you now have an opportunity to make to add your input into the world dialogue here and the world understanding, and how you vote makes a difference. I think all your classmates feel that same obligation. Do you think, Alec?
Not exactly. I'm actually surprised at how few people I know are registered to vote. I mean, my close friends are all registered to vote, and they all are aware of the responsibility, and they take that responsibility. But I'm surprised when I speak to people, for example, in Los Angeles, and they're not registered to vote, and they've got the whole mentality that it doesn't matter. My vote doesn't matter. And I've taken it upon myself to educate people to, get out there, vote, use your voice, because your voice does matter.
Wouldn't it be sad if it really didn't matter? If it was all bought and paid for and we were just going through the stages. Any comments you want to make, Ashley, before we sign off here?
Not in particular, just in reference to that. I think sometimes people recognize that the vote is so important that they don't want to make the improper decision because they don't feel like they can give an informed decision. So I understand that perspective as well.
Sure. Well, listen, you guys have been great.
What an amazing show.
Yeah.
Thank you. You guys are fantastic.
We hope to hear you. We want to ask you back. We're going to be doing the show. And so as you mature through college, we want to ask you back to see if your attitudes have changed. And David and I have one more show to go this summer. Next week will be our last show. We have on Rich Carmona. Yep. Former Special Forces hero,
Green Beret,
medic,
Vietnam, medic, and
medical doctor, and 17th Surgeon General of the United States.
Yeah,
and Dr. Carmona was He's on the advisory boards of the VA and Homeland Security, and I think Special Operations, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's got input in a lot of different communities, and so we'll be speaking with him next week, and look forward to that. He's a good friend and unbelievable contributor to what's going on in the veterans community, not only here in Arizona, but also across the country. So I'd like to, before we close out,
Yes.
a quick shout out to some of the folks here at the East Valley Veterans Education Center. And give thanks to starting with Chancellor Glassbar and President Bustamante, Felicia Gantler, and last but not least, Troy Friedman, who's just been exceptional in bringing these kind of resources to our show. And we just want to thank all those folks and look forward to working with them in the future.
See you next Wednesday, everybody. Take care and be safe.